Now to the $4 billion Environmental Bond Act that's on the ballot next week. The Adirondack Council is among a coalition of groups encouraging voters to make sure they flip their ballot over and vote on proposition question number 1 on the other side. John Sheehan is with the Adirondack Council and joins us now. Welcome, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
So what does this ballot question ask of voters, and why is the Adirondack Council, along with several other environmental organizations, pushing voters to pass this?
The Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act pretty much does what it sounds like it's going to do. The clean water portion of it, I think, is the most important for a lot of the taxpayers in the North Country. There are a number of communities in the Adirondacks and beyond that need new water, drinking water and wastewater systems. And those systems are very expensive. We're seeing all over the Adirondacks communities with just a couple of hundred people in them having to foot the bill for projects that cost millions of dollars. And to have the state step in and provide 50, even 75% of that money can be a real lifesaver for communities that are struggling to keep their economies alive. Essentially, this allows us to do a lot of things at once that can both spur the economy and help public health and the environment at the same time. In terms of clean air, I think one of the most important things that we could see is a modernization of the air quality monitoring program in the Adirondacks. We have had a very effective program here. It's really been the backbone of all of the federal regulations that have helped curb acid rain, and really the basis for a lot of the research for climate in the region. But that equipment was installed 50, 60, 70 years ago in many cases. A lot of its original equipment needs to be replaced to keep acid rain at bay, to make sure that we are having an effective climate program. We need the science that helps to measure those things and be sure we're on the right track.
And then also part of this is the mitigation of climate change and dealing with the impact that climate change is already having. Hurricane Irene, we saw Hurricane Sandy, we saw Hurricane Ida, Sandy and Ida affecting the city area. Irene, Tropical Storm Irene, by the time it was here, devastating the Adirondacks. These extreme weather events, larger weather events, seem to be what we'll see from climate change, one of the things we'll see.
And preparing for that in a place like the Adirondacks, where we're not on the seacoast, really means dealing with making our infrastructure more resilient. So replacing culverts that are too small to handle stormwater helps to preserve a roadway that doesn't get blown out in a big storm. Making those improvements can help preserve a bridge rather than having to replace it, can make a big difference in terms of storm cleanup costs and how much damage gets done, and how long we do without things like power and the ability to get to the store when you need to get there. So all of that really has a big impact on the park's future and on the North Country's future. And this Bond Act can help us along the way in doing the things that are necessary to implement the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is the state law that was passed a couple of years ago that really needs some financing for us to realize those goals. And the goals are really good. It would help us reduce our greenhouse gas by about 50% by 2030 and by 80% by 2050. And that would make a huge difference in the global battle to fight climate change. At the same time, Tom, we're looking at a program that will produce some 80,000 new jobs in New York State. These are jobs that are mainly involved in transitioning to a cleaner energy economy.
This is now a $4.2 billion bond act. Originally, it was a $3 billion bond act back in, supposed to go on the ballot in 2020, didn't because of COVID.
That's right.
Governor Hochul and lawmakers decided to add an additional $1 billion to this bond act. What would that be earmarked for?
I think it was really a recognition of the great need out there, the water and sewer replacement projects that nearly $1 billion of that will go to. In the Adirondacks, we've gone out and calculated how much money is going to be necessary to help all of the municipalities that need help. And we're looking at more than $200 million in projects that need to be done over the next decade. That is a lot of money for a region that doesn't have a whole lot of political clout in Albany. So realistically, for us to think that we can negotiate our way in an annual budget setting to getting that kind of money devoted to the North Country, we really don't think that that's likely to happen.
Along with the water infrastructure, along with the mitigating climate change, sets more land aside, land conservation.
That's right. Part of that is for flood control. Part of that is for controlling non-point source pollution to keep agricultural runoff from getting into the water supply. And also there is open space need in the Adirondacks as well for things like improving trails, new design for trails that have been overused in the Adirondacks, and in other places for brand new trails. We also need some parking to help alleviate some of the overcrowding issue.
The $4 billion price tag is a concern to some, and the reason is some groups and political leaders have come out in opposition.
Well, I think this is actually a good time to be issuing bonds. The stock market is getting very nervous about high interest rates right now, but bonds tend to do well when interest rates go up. The folks who are going to purchase these as investments see them as being more attractive in this particular environment.
There are political leaders who have come out against it. State Senator Dan Steck, who represents much of the North Country, is one of them. He said in a debate that we hosted here at Mountain Lake PBS a couple of weeks ago that he has doubts whether it's going to make a difference or if it's going to check some boxes for people to feel good about saying they support the environment. And he said he didn't think that the money is going to be efficiently used and that he's afraid it's going to get wasted or squandered. What do you say to people like Senator Steck to try to convince them that this should be passed?
Well, I think that there will be a very open process about how this money is spent. In the Adirondacks, there are dozens of municipalities whose wastewater permits with the state have expired. They can't meet the requirements of those permits because their equipment is no longer up to the task. We're really trying cooperatively to get that problem fixed. I'm disappointed that he thinks that. I think that there are plenty of reasons to believe that this will help the economy and bring new jobs to the region. I hope that he takes a closer look at it, because I think that if he does, that he'll see that.
Others raise the question of the need for the state to borrow this money if it's already going to receive billions of dollars in federal money to upgrade water and sewer and become more flood resilient, both from the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act.
Both of those are very important new pieces of legislation on the federal level. Both of those also require local matches for a lot of the federal money that is being handed out in those cases. So,
and would that match money come from
that
this
match
bond
money
act?
would come from the Bond Act. Otherwise, it would have to come from local taxpayers or from state taxes. And it can really give a big boost if everybody is working in the same direction. And for a long time, we've really seen the state and federal governments button heads on public policy. So to see it work together is really a pleasure to see that happen, and I'm hoping that we can demonstrate that that is a great way to get these programs really chugging along.
John Sheehan, it is always great to see you. Thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.